Okay, 6:30, we will get started. Start with roll call. Thomas Trott, our newest member.
Here.
Thank you, Thomas. Great to see you.
Good to see you.
Mike Langer.
Hi. All right.
Present.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Thomas.
See you.
Lana Rivera.
I'm here.
Thank you. Neil. I know Neil's here. Kim.
Here.
All right. I'm here. All right. Well, yeah, welcome, Thomas Trott, our newest board member.
I'm
Sworn
present.
in a week or so ago, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Congratulations. Right, we will move to the flag salute and keep moving along here. I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the
And to the
republic
republic for which it
and
stands,
under God,
under God,
indivisible.
indivisible, liberty, and justice for all.
Right. Thank you, everybody. We'll officially call the order. And our next item is oath of office for Mike Langer, re-elected.
Michael, are
Grant, do you want
ready?
me to? I am.
All right,
Should
so
I
we would just,
stand? What do you want me to do here?
we would ask you to stand, raise your right hand, and if you would read your oath of office, please.
Okay. I, Michael Langer, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington, and that I will faithfully and impartially perform and discharge the duties of office of the Rochester School District 401, School Board Director, District Number 1, according to the law and the best of my abilities.
Thank you and congratulations. And I should say congratulations to all of us for the privilege to have you as a board member. So thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. It is a privilege for me to serve. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. All right, next item is, it's actually School Board Recognition Month.
All right. Justin, do you mind projecting the attachment? Thank you so much. So it is School Board Recognition Month. So bear with me as I take a second to read the proclamation from the state, for the state of Washington for all school board members. Whereas the mission of Washington's public school system is to assure that all students achieve at high levels and possess the knowledge and skills to be responsible members of a democratic society who enjoy productive and satisfying lives. And whereas Washington's 295 locally elected school boards and 9 elected educational service district boards are the core of the public education governance system in our state. And whereas the districts and regions they lead serve more than 1 million students, have a combined annual budget of over $15 billion and employ approximately 120,000 people. Whereas the school directors play a crucial role in promoting student learning and achievement by creating a vision, establishing policies and budgets, and setting clear standards of accountability for all involved. And whereas the school directors are directly accountable to the residents in their districts and regions, serving as a vital link between members of the community and their schools. And whereas school directors and educational service districts provide a passionate voice of advocacy for public schools and the welfare of school children. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize school directors as outstanding volunteers and champions of public education. Now, therefore, I, Jay Inslee, Governor of the state of Washington, do hereby proclaim January 2022 as School Board Recognition Month in Washington. and encourage all people in our state to join me in this special observance. So thank you so much, and we will continue our celebration of all of you as board members throughout the rest of the month, but wanted to start today's meeting with that proclamation.
Thank you, Kim. All right, next up on our agenda is the first opportunity for public input. This is for public input for items on the agenda. If you have questions or comments, please put your name, email address in chat. And Justin will share those with us so we can call you in that order. And email address helps us respond to you, make sure we answer your questions. So we'll give it about a minute. There's also an opportunity at the end of the meeting for public input for items that are not specifically on the agenda. Hey, Justin, do we have anybody?
Nobody at this time, Grant.
Okay. All right, we will move on to the consent agenda. Includes the minutes, vouchers, resignation and a retirement, Kids training contracts, and my records clerk. We have a retirement announcement that I think Sarah Thomas is with us tonight. So just like to thank her for her. I got to open it up because it's 25 years of service here at Rochester School District. Do I have that right? 16 years, 30 years teaching career, obviously, but 16 years spent at Rochester School District. As a parent, his kids have had you in class, just there are lots of great teachers in this district, but your name comes up a lot in our house, and we really thank you for your dedication and just interest in leadership for kids, and thank you for everything you've done, and congratulations on your retirement at the end of the school year. Let's see.
Hey, Grant?
Yes,
Oh, I'm sorry.
a little bit of an echo.
You would do it the wrong echo there. If I might, I would just like to echo your sentiments to Sarah. I don't think, Sarah, you got my oldest son, but you had the other three after that, and they just have all the respect in the world for you and the support that you gave them. Particularly, I think more out of the classroom maybe than in the classroom, and they just really talk highly of you, and as a parent you were real easy to work with, and when we were working with them. So all the best in your retirement, and thanks for what you contribute to our family and all the families in Rochester. So certainly want to double up on what Grant had to say there. Thank you.
All right. Are there other items in the consent agenda? Hopefully board members had a chance to look through each of those items. Are there any questions about any of those items? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
This is Juana. I'll move forward to approve it.
Thank you, Juana. Do I hear a second?
This is Neil. I will second that motion.
Thank you, Neil. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
No,
Any opposed?
yes, I'm going to abstain from this just because of my knowledge on some of the other information other than the retirements and the.
Okay. Thank you, Thomas. All right, so consent agenda is approved. Next item 7, reports. Business reports. Jill?
So this is the November business reports, because when we met early in December, they weren't quite ready yet. So you're gonna get November a little late. So where would you like to start, Grant?
About the all fund summary?
So at the end of November, general fund ending balance was just over 4.4 million, capital projects at 3.2, debt service at 1.6, ASB at 517,000, and transportation vehicle at 139,000.
All right, and then the monthly board report, November.
So this one shows additional detail on the breakout of the fund balance. So there was 410,000 restricted for carryover, 2.4 committed to fund balance policy, 1.5 million restricted to the local sub fund, and there was 0 unreserved.
Great. And the last one, the budget status for November.
So at the end of November, the fiscal year is 25% completed. Our revenues are at just over 23%, and our expenditures are at just under 25%.
Okay. So my review looks like, things are tracking along as expected. No
Yep,
surprises.
definitely.
Okay. Board members, questions for Jill? Okay, thank you, Jill. Next item is the superintendent update. Kim.
Is everyone able to hear, see my screen and hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So titled Snows, Floods, and Omicron, oh my. That has been 2022 for our community and our school district. First of all, wanted to share some amazing photography taken by Aaron Narquist of Scatter Creek Aerials. He happened to fly his drone over some of our buildings here. And so district office is in one picture, and the middle school in the next picture here. I bring those up also as an opportunity to acknowledge the amazing work of our maintenance crew, in particular, Melissa Music, Justin Norman, David Dill, and Ed Dow, who all spent the weekend prior to our return to school in January, digging out to make sure that we were ready to go. They did an amazing job. So special thank you to that crew. Also pictures from Aaron of the recent flooding in our community, and so many people were impacted. It was just heartbreaking to see the loss that our community sustained, but very heartwarming to see the generous acts of so many people in our community to come to their aid in places to stay, in basic needs being met. Clearly the hard work of our county road crews and emergency management and fire department and all of those folks who were busy assisting rescues and all types of efforts to help these folks. And we do have links to a variety of resources available for anybody impacted by floods that we can assist, as well as the Roof Center is providing assistance. There will be people on site here in this building shortly to start taking people's loss reports to help them become eligible for some assistance as a result of flooding damage. So just a huge thank you to our community. And this is the website. They're really encouraging people submit early a report of their losses. So anybody that you know who was impacted and had some type of loss experience as a result of the floods, if you would direct them to this Thurston County Emergency Management site to start that process. There's one for individuals and then one for businesses. Throughout both of those issues, the snow and the floods, First Student, our transportation company that we contract with, has done just amazing work, rerouting buses and changing routes, lots of communication with families, and constantly changing circumstances. So special shout out to Linda Ladd, the bus garage manager, to Brenda and Jenny, who are folks that are in the office, particularly to Brenda, who is our dispatcher, and as you'll hear a little bit later on, is driving a route daily at this point. And then, of course, to all of our drivers, we appreciate all their efforts. Sorry, this is a little blurry. Just another reminder that the school makeup day for that flood day that we lost last Friday will be Friday, January 28th. Now to the Omicron section of our update. I wanted to start with sharing our staff absentee numbers so that you get an understanding. We're going to talk a lot about, I will talk a lot in this report about how we're going to keep our schools open, all the lengths we're going to take to do that. But it does require a couple different things, people to be healthy, and students and staff, and having enough staff to be operational. So right now, we have data from the 5th, 6th, and so this was Wednesday and Thursday of last week, and then the first 2 days of this week. So it shows the number of cases with staff in terms of COVID positive cases here. So it's ranged from 8 to 11. COVID related absences are anything from somebody that's being quarantined or somebody who's being home caring for a child in their household that is on quarantine or is tested positive, anything COVID related. Maybe they're out for testing or something like that. And then all the other absences are here. Please note on the 10th that this pretty significant uptick in absences is partially as a result of people who were impacted by flooded roads and couldn't get to school from their homes. So these are our totals. They're not equally distributed among our schools. We have a couple schools that have been harder hit by absenteeism of staff than others. Right now, that is Rochester Primary and Grand Mountain Elementary School. Next, we are also tracking our driver data, their absenteeism, because we need to get our kids to school and they are pivotal in that process. We have 20 bus routes. Currently, we have 18 drivers. And so as mentioned earlier, our dispatcher, Brenda, is driving a route every day, as is our safety manager for the bus garage. So both of them are doing routes to cover, which means we have no substitutes. So when we have somebody who is out ill, they are having to do some really creative work to cover for that. They first of all check to see if there are any other drivers from other places that are first student yards, as they call them, in neighboring communities that may be able to drive for them. Sometimes they're able to pull subs from those neighboring districts. After that, they do things like divide the route up and have other drivers who have shorter routes pick up a portion of another route to ensure that we can get those kids to school. So they are doing all kinds of things to get kids to school here every day that are above and beyond what they would normally be doing on an average day in an average year. Now for our student data. So we have, this is broke out from the first day back after break by the number of students who we have record that they have COVID. So this that first line represents that number. And so you can see how that has grown since the start of the school year in 2022, from 8 to 30 yesterday. COVID related absences are quarantines, maybe they have a family member who has COVID, other COVID related issues. And you can see that number has doubled since the start back in January. And then we're also just tracking those students who are out sick because they may eventually end up being tested and found to have COVID as well. So we always monitor those. So these are our current numbers. Board members, do you have any questions about that?
Hi, Kim, it's Thomas.
Hi, Thomas.
Hey, I have a couple questions. So when anyone now, whether it's the staff, bus drivers, and or students, if they are out for COVID, like COVID, they actually have COVID or somebody in their family, they bring that note back to the principal and or administrative staff saying, hey, yes, I have a negative test to prove that they were out, or they're no longer, well, I guess it would be negative.
No. So that's not the process, but I will go through in just a minute. I have a slide a little bit further that kind of talks through our new protocols that go into effect tomorrow.
Okay, second question, you might have an answer for that. And then how many staff are we tracking? Anybody who's had it multiple times?
We have not been tracking that.
Okay.
We probably have data that we have a record of staff members who have had COVID, but we haven't been looking at our data for that purpose.
Okay, I'm just curious as to how many people have, I mean, I don't know if we have staff go out, they should have to provide a note back to their supervisor, whether it be in the principal, whoever, so on and so forth, to say that they have a negative test. We should be getting a negative test from them when they come back to work, correct?
We do not have to get confirmation of a negative test before they return, according to the guidelines that we're required to follow from the Department of Health and the Department of Thurston County Public Health and Social Services.
Okay.
All right. Anybody else? And I'll move on. And hopefully, Thomas, when I get to those sections, if I'm getting close but not quite answering your question, will you ask again? All right. Some of you have heard Chris Reichdahl, the Superintendent of Public Instruction for the state of Washington, his snippets on King 5 News or whatever news channel you watch, or perhaps you've seen, publications online or elsewhere, but he made statements over the last week or two explaining to the state of Washington that there is no indication that a statewide closure of schools will be coming, that they do not see that as being something that will happen in our state at this time as a result of Omicron, that they see a very different approach to the impact of the COVID numbers that we see in schools. And so I'm going to go through and talk a little bit about the new approach and the fact that closures will happen school by school, district by district, region by region, but they're not expecting any statewide proclamation that would put schools back into remote learning, that they're not taking that generalized approach in this particular circumstance. So I get this question frequently: who determines whether a school is closed or a district is closed? So if they're absent a proclamation by the governor that closes schools, there are two different ways schools can be closed as a result of like COVID outbreak. One is through the health department, it's the county level health officer. So Dr. Abdumalik has the authority to close classrooms, schools, and or districts. And that is based on outbreaks. So when the disease transmission is so high that it is the health directors or health authorities' decision is the only way that we can stop that is to send everybody home and take a break and stop the transmission, then for that purpose, she can close a classroom, like I said, a school or our district. If the reason for closure is not the volume of students or individuals who have COVID, but staffing shortages that are keeping us from being able to be operational, then that is, superintendents have authority for that decision. So it really depends the reason why a school is needing to close, who would be the person who would make those closure decisions. Any questions about that? All right, so what I think is important for everybody to know is right now we are focusing our efforts on ways to safely keep our schools open. We do not want to do any wholesale closures unless those are absolutely necessary. So some of the keys to that are COVID safety mitigation and safety measures. So those are things like being really diligent about wearing masks, being hypersensitive to social distancing, hand washing, and observing for signs of illness. So when our staff members feel like they're becoming ill, we're asking them to immediately let the office know so that they can go up and be tested and sent home if necessary. And we're also asking staff to be just observant of kids who all of a sudden aren't looking well and also need to be checked to see if perhaps they are becoming ill. So big key is, safety measures that helps us to keep open. The other thing that is helping us to keep open is some pretty crazy and valiant efforts on the part of our staff in covering for one another, meaning we have people out and there aren't enough subs to cover for all those people. They are wearing multiple hats and helping to cover each other's students. In the K-5, we have taken classrooms where we don't have a substitute, and perhaps it's a first grade class, and we'll divide that class of students out and disperse them into the other first grade classrooms so that they are getting same instruction as they would get in terms of what they're being exposed to, and still being able to keep our schools open when we don't have enough staff. So a lot of creative problem solving is going into just keeping our positions filled through the staff that we do have access to. We have principals who are covering classes. We have central office folks who are headed into our schools and doing coverage as well. So what can we anticipate moving forward? The disease modeling predictions would say that we are going to continue to experience a pretty rapid increase in the number of positive cases of COVID in students and staff, and that should peak in about 4 to 6 weeks. So it is going to be a rough month or so when it comes to COVID in schools. Some other things, as a result of those recommendations, we anticipate that staff and student absences, however, will be minimized, not in total number, but minimized in comparison to what they would be right now, because we have some changing requirements that will go in place tomorrow morning. And they change quarantine and isolation requirements for students and staff. We'll expect a pretty significant increase in test demand. We, however, unlike many districts, are in a really good place right now with our supply of tests. So in December, after school was out, there was that change in protocol, testing protocol for athletes. And I knew that was going to bring about a surge in demand for tests, but that many people wouldn't get their orders placed until just right when school started back up in January. We placed a supplemental order in December and have a nice surplus of tests right now. So I'm happy that we're sitting in a good place in terms of our ability to provide tests to people who need them. Because of this peak that we're expecting, we are preparing for the likelihood that we'll have very short-term, what I'm calling rolling classroom closures. And those could be, like I mentioned before, either due to an outbreak. The health department says you have too many students in this class who have COVID, you need to close that classroom down, or because we just don't have enough staff, even with our creative problem solving around coverage, there will be a point where we'll exhaust all of our available people and may have to close a classroom down. So for either of those reasons, we may have a classroom closure. The health department is telling us that in the past where they have closed a classroom from 10 to 14 days, based on the new guidance, a classroom closure as a result of an outbreak would likely last only 5 days, and that's 5 calendar days. So some of those, depending on when it starts, it may not be 5 instructional days. Staff shortage closures could be ranges from 1 single day to multiple days. So we're looking at ways that if we get to a point where we do not have enough staff, can we rotate that staff so the same classes aren't impacted for long periods of time? Knowing that the very best place for the majority of kids by far is in the classroom. So we're going to be working on ways to do that. And then if we have too many classrooms closed within a building, the health officer can say that the outbreak is reached such a level as to warrant the closure of entire school. And likewise, we could get in a place where we're so desperate for staff that we would need to close the school. But that is not what we're working towards. We're working to avoid those things. Questions?
Well, I'm going to have a question.
Okay.
Okay, so it's a general question, and we can kind of take the wording and tweak it around. So if a student goes out sick, whether they are asymptomatic, whatever we want to call it, okay, can or should those students do the remote learning? Is that still an option for them while they are at home in quarantine so that they can still continue to stay on pace, keeping up with their assignments?
So at this time, Thomas, we do not have any staff that are dedicated as remote teachers. So all of our teachers are in-person teachers, and they are doing the best they can to have assignments posted into their Google Classrooms in the event that they have students who can't come to school.
Okay.
And so they can access those. Should a whole class be sent on quarantine, if we close a classroom down, then we're going to provide remote instruction where there's actually a teacher, might be their teacher if their teacher is well enough to teach, or a different teacher who would provide instruction to them via Zoom.
Okay, yeah, that's generally what I was getting at, because that's what is important, whether, depending on the sickness of the child. And because I don't always get a good answer from my daughter about what needs to be done. So as long as that information is in where they can receive that information in Google Classroom, that it can still be completed. So that was what I was getting at.
Perfect.
All right.
All right. So again, I think I've covered some of this already. What are the things we're doing to avoid closures? I've already talked about those preventative measures. The other thing that I will add based on this slide is what are we doing to prepare in the event we do have to have a classroom closure or multiple classroom closures. So we have a checklist for teachers, and it is a whole list of things that they can do in advance of a closure. What are those things that need to happen once a closure is announced for their room? And then what are those things that they do directly after that announcement in that transition time to having kids do remote instruction? And so that checklist is, we are spending this Friday afternoon, our Act Friday time, for everybody to go through those checklists and make sure that they're in good order, have a clear understanding about the protocol, about what will happen in the event that we have to have a classroom closure. Some of you might recall that we had classrooms closed in September. Late September, we had 3 classrooms in our district that we closed due to health department requirements. And so that it was at that time that we developed that classroom, that closure checklist. And so now we're just reminding everybody of that in case that it's needed. We've also started working with our Sodexo, who is the company we contract with for meals. And they are gearing up in the event that we have a classroom or a building closure, that they'll be able to provide meals to families. We do not have the capacity at this time to do that via bus route, but there would be opportunity for families to come in and pick up either a week's worth of meals for their children or daily, or they may have the option between those two. So that is being worked on right now in preparation. Hopefully, again, we don't have to use it, but we'll be ready if we do. And then exploring lots of alternatives for transportation in the event that we have enough school staff to operate. The health department hasn't closed any classrooms down or anything like that, but really if the point of stress in our system is that we don't have enough drivers to run all of our routes, what are we going to do? So it's important to know that schools can have school without providing transportation to their general population, as long as we meet the federal requirements to have transportation for our homeless students, excuse me, or special education students. So while it's not optimal to operate school without having busing, as long as we can fill those busing requirements, we can still open our schools. So we are also looking at, like I said, if we have a significant loss of drivers, they're out for absenteeism of some reason, then are there ways where we can do half the routes, send those drivers back out, get the other routes, come back in? So it wouldn't be as long of a school day because lots of our drivers would have to drive 4 routes, 2 elementary routes and 2 middle school, high school routes. But we're exploring options like that, anything we can do to keep kids coming to school every day. Questions on that slide?
Hey, Kim, just one tidbit on the busing thing for when you talk about on Friday. When the bus comes by here, either picking up students or dropping them off, there is minimal students on that bus, on those buses. So if the bus garage can come up with a plan to consolidate, I mean, we're not getting the bang for our buck when you only have 5 kids on the bus that holds however many. And that's just a regular bus. I'm not talking about any kids with that need special transportation or anything like that.
Yep.
But I can tell you from what I see from where I live at, and then on the buses that I see from where I work at, and see kids getting on and off that, but those buses aren't even half full. Now I know we're required to have busing, but maybe they can look at somehow consolidating some of that. And I hope that's what you're talking about, that they're going to look at maybe on Friday.
Yeah, they're looking at that even before Friday. But sometimes when we see buses drive by, they've already dropped off or haven't yet picked up all of their kids. So they're not, that full capacity happens as they're pulling into the school to drop off, and as they're leaving is when we see our buses at their full capacity. But they vary significantly, Thomas, from just being close to having all the seats full to really small routes. Our smallest routes tend to be in our furthest outlying areas within our community. Independence, Michigan Hill, Gate, some of those areas, because they're super long routes in terms of how long it takes to get out there and back, that they can't fill those buses up with lots of other stops before they get there, else the buses can't get back in time.
Okay,
But we have fewer kids by far riding the bus this year because busing really is the place where kids are most at risk of contracting the virus from one another because of being in that confined space and less than 6 feet apart for a significant, time. So again, when we're short buses, they have already consolidated some of those routes. They'll continue to look at consolidating, but we do love to be able to keep those small and to an hour or less, just to make sure that we can have those buses out there back in time to do the next route.
okay.
Next, I want to really briefly share with you some of the changes to expect. Again, these are the changes that go into effect for us tomorrow. And what I wanted to point out to you is that this is a Department of Health document that came out late Friday night. And there is this awkward amount of time between when the Department of Health in the state of Washington puts out guidance, and then that guidance has to be approved by Thurston County before we can put it into effect. And so they review it. They can alter that if they have, solid statistical information that shows the needs in a particular county would require more stringent guidelines and safety protocols. So this morning we met with our public health officer. She told us that it is her decision that we would be following the Department of Health guidance. And she used that to update the flow charts that some of you have seen. They will be the updated flow charts will be posted on our website, and that's what we use to help determine what to do in all kinds of different scenarios in terms of quarantine, isolation, and just response to illness. Somebody's presenting with sniffles or something like that. So Test to Stay is a program that we do have in our district, and it will having it will significantly decrease the number of students who need to be absent from school should their family agree to allow them to participate. So I'll go over that in just a minute. So Test to Stay is used when someone has had an exposure. So they've had an exposure, but they don't meet the other qualifications to be exempt from quarantine. And so in order to, they need to quarantine, but they can use what they are calling a modified quarantine. And modified quarantine means that you can actually come to school as long as you don't have any symptoms and you agree to be tested twice during this 5-day period of time following exposure. And so that used to be, we've had Test to Stay here, but it was restricted to people whose exposure was at school. If they got exposed to COVID at home or somewhere in the community, that didn't count. And it only counted for students. And now Test to Stay can include staff and students, and it's regardless of where the exposure happened. So it's huge in its ability to keep more students at school, fewer students having to be at home. Isolation also changed. Just a reminder, isolation is for people who are ill, people who have COVID. Even if you don't have any symptoms, if you test positive for COVID and you're asked to stay home, that's considered isolation. And so isolation has been reduced from 10 days to 5 days. And the 5 days starts when you started getting symptoms or if you're somebody who doesn't have any symptoms when you got that positive test. So 5 days from there, if after those 5 days you are no longer experiencing a fever, or your symptoms, if you had any, are starting to resolve, then you can come back to school or work. So if it's one of our employees, or if it's a student, they can come back to school. Their requirement is to wear a well-fitted mask for those days 6 through 10. Quarantine. So again, quarantine's different than isolation. Quarantines are for people who aren't sick, but they've been exposed to somebody who has COVID-19. People don't need to quarantine if they have had all of the available vaccine that they're eligible for. So if you're 18 and up and you've had your 2 vaccines, if it's Moderna or Pfizer, 1 vaccine, if it is Johnson & Johnson, and a booster, you don't need to quarantine if you've had an exposure and you're not sick. If you are ages 5 through 17 and you've completed what's eligible to you, so for most people that's 2, is it Pfizer that we give kids, 2 vaccines, then they don't need to quarantine. Or if you're somebody who has had COVID-19 in the last 90 days, you do not need to quarantine. Anybody else who doesn't fit one of those 3 bullets can use test to stay, which means if they don't have symptoms, like we talked about before, if they don't have symptoms and they agree to be tested twice within those 5 days, then they can come to school. At any point, if they start becoming symptomatic or test positive, they of course then have to go home and isolate. So this used to be the only people who could do tests to stay. It was really minimal who could participate in this option, and now it's open to people in whether you're vaccinated or not. You can agree to test to stay. For people who don't want to test, then it's a 10-day quarantine. Occasionally there's a 14-day quarantine, but that's something that medical personnel decide if you're somebody who's immunocompromised or have some other particular circumstance that would require a longer quarantine. But for most people, it would be 10 if they choose not to do test to stay. So earlier I had a bullet that said that we would anticipate fewer people having to be gone from school compared to what it would have been under the previous guidelines. So we may have just as many numbers because the variant is ramping up and we're having more cases, but when you are a close contact, it's likely that you would not need to miss any school or work, because you could do test to stay. Questions about that?
Have you posted this yet?
It posts tomorrow morning when it becomes effective.
Okay. Because just myself looking at it, it can be kind of confusing to read.
Absolutely. And so there is a different version of this that will also be posted. That is actually the flow chart. And it's several flow charts in it. You kind of figure out your circumstances and then you follow it through for your particular circumstance.
What about a student and or staff, whoever that hasn't had any vaccine or anything?
So if they haven't had a vaccine in there and they've been exposed, is that the scenario?
Yes.
Then if that's the case, then they can continue to come as long as they don't have any symptoms and they do this test to stay protocol of
Okay.
2 tests.
Okay.
Major change from before.
Okay.
Kim,
But there's going to be a flow chart that helps us undereducated people
don't say undereducated, because it is everybody who needs the flow chart.
Well, but from the
Because,
people who are making this,
oh yes, because it's changed many times. So each
Yeah.
time that they have a new body of evidence that would say the data supports a different course of action, then they make changes, and it's frustrating. And it can be hard to adapt to all of those changes, but I'm so thankful for them that they haven't just stuck with, here, you have to stay out for 10 days.
Yeah.
And that there's this new flexibility. So
Okay.
yes, we all will, we will be a slave to reading those flow charts. And anytime that the school contacts a family because of an exposure or because somebody tested positive, and sometimes those contacts are actually families calling us, then we help to walk them through the appropriate flow chart
Okay,
and set the timeline for that particular child about when they can come back, or they can come back tomorrow as long as they agree to this. If you don't want to sign the paperwork giving us permission for that, then it's 10 days, and here's the day that would be that your child would be eligible to come back.
okay.
Kim, this is Neil.
Yes.
Oh, we were just getting ready to go on to some of the other stuff, but
No, that's quite all right.
just-
Sorry.
Just quickly, yeah, we got the flow chart. We made some changes. There's some more things coming. I'm
All of a sudden we lost our ability to hear you, Neil. Still can't hear you.
masks. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you just, all of a sudden you came back, but there was a time there we didn't hear anything you said.
I'm going to stop my video and try this
Okay.
again. Hopefully you can hear me better, just bandwidth
Yes.
issues. Yeah, it's like I can either do one or the other, but I can't do both sometimes. I apologize. Having enough product in place, all the personal, the PPPs,
Mhm.
The company we were contracted through, are they still providing a good amount of the source of this product? Or with this test to stay program, is the state helping cover the costs for all these tests that we're going to be having to do? I know that as that next slide was showing, the WIAA stuff with the wrestling tournaments, and I know they had made changes since the last meeting we've had.
Right.
Because things just weren't working. I just want to make sure we don't run out of product. And if we have to close classes, I mean, if we have to close like one campus, does that change our finished day of school? Or do we have to have makeup days for that school? Or is it just as a whole district?
Those are great questions. Will you make sure that I answer all of them before I finish up? I'm going to try to kind of go backwards and say that when a single campus is closed, historically, they have not had to make that day up. So I do not know with 100% certainty what the circumstances will be like this year, but in the past, our examples would have been, we have a single building that doesn't have power. Everybody else does. The rest of the buildings are open. We have school for the rest of the students, and we don't make that day up. I'm assuming the same will hold true for this circumstance. So that's my answer to that one. I believe you also asked about our supply of tests and who pays for those. So the school district has not put out any money for any tests. Those have all come to us through the Department of Health for the state of Washington. So that's how we get those. Personal protective equipment, we do pay for. So masks, hand sanitizer, all of those types of things we do pay for, but we have done that as part of a statewide contract. And so when all the schools in the state of Washington are all going out to bid together, there's a lot of buying power. And so things have been incredibly less expensive than if we were just to start looking on the open market, check Amazon for the price of masks or something like that. Occasionally we'll have a product that isn't part of the state contract that we need, and we do have to go and search for it and purchase it just like I would as a private consumer. And in those cases, we're using And in all the cases, our personal protective equipment purchases are all being paid for through our ESSER funds. So funds that are really for COVID response. Was there a question I didn't answer?
No, thank you very much. I appreciate all those wonderful answers. And I know if we need to go find something, Justin Black is a bulldog. He will go get us
He
what we
is.
need. And thank you, Justin.
Yep.
Thank you all.
Kim,
All
is
right.
Justin the one, is he the one that orders all these test kits and stuff like that?
No, the test kit ordering is a combination of, we have a person in our district who is in charge of testing operations. And so she does the test kit ordering, or I do. One of the two of us does it.
Okay, so we don't have a logistics person who does all the
No,
ordering and stuff. I don't think somebody, the superintendent probably should not be doing the testing. I think we could find
Yeah.
somebody else.
but sometimes I'm the only person who's working when it needs to be done. So like during a break or what have you.
Okay.
And then our maintenance department, Ed, is responsible once we have, once we get all of our PPE, with the exception of tests, once we get the rest of our PPE, he maintains the inventory of that and disseminates it out to all the different buildings.
Okay, that was going to be a question somewhere in there, but that's who I wanted to know, kind of who maintains that stuff. So we have somebody to blame when we don't have enough.
And we meet, there's a group of us who meet weekly and check on all of that to make sure that we're not falling behind. And Jill and Shauna also are great at helping us to order those specialty items as well. So there's a whole team of people that are in it together. The other change that I wanted to acknowledge that happened since our last board meeting was the requirement for all athletes, not just unvaccinated athletes, but all athletes and coaches in high-risk sports. So for us, that's basketball, wrestling, and cheer, are required to test 3 times a week. So that is also a change. Huge thank you to our nurses, our health room assistants, and our testing and contact tracing coordinator. As you can imagine, all of these changes create a lot of havoc in their world. And so they're adjusting to all these changes as they have all along, and have quite an uptick in workload right now as these numbers climb. And so we are grateful to them and continue to do what we can to help let them know that they're appreciated. Sorry, that is so fuzzy. It didn't look like that when it was small on my screen. We also want to thank parents, because throughout all the things in my presentation tonight, the snow, the floods, all the changes through Omicron and all the various disruptions to school as normal, parents have to go through all of it. And so we're just incredibly grateful to all of our families for their patience and support as we adjust as we go and we learn about the ins and outs of whatever the next variant is. And in this case, it's not impacting people with really severe illness, but it is impacting a lot of people, and it's expected to impact a lot more in the next 2 to 4 weeks. Despite all of that, we still have kids who are doing great work and teachers who are busy assisting them. And so these are some of our kids in our middle school, busy working away. Elementary school, another middle school student. And so for that, we have huge thank yous to our teachers, administrators, educational assistant, and all of our support staff who are keeping things as normal as possible in terms of the experience students are having at school. And the last thing in my report is we have an upcoming opportunity. We're putting the final touches on it. It should be out by the end of this week, an opportunity for our families and staff to participate in giving the board some feedback on COVID-19 guiding principles for student and staff safety. So some guiding principles have been put in place to direct my work as the superintendent, work of our administrators as we navigate the challenges of COVID. And we'll ask our families and our staff to provide some input to the board and I on those guiding principles. So watch for that survey link. It'll be coming out by the end of this week. And we've shown this before, but again, if you have concerns about things like vaccination requirements or those guidelines that were just shared that came from the Department of Health, or the requirements for staff, these are the different contact names, numbers, and email addresses to be able to direct comment and to other people who are making many of the decisions that we enact. I think that is it for my report. This is for somebody else's report. Anything else before we transition?
Kim,
Yes,
you hear me? Okay.
yes, I can hear you now. Okay, now I can't hear you, Dale.
Taking their kids to these different places at the other schools we're competing against.
Could you repeat that? We lost you again.
I know my internet.
Uh-oh. So Neil, I think we're going to have to ask you to put your question in chat if you don't mind, and we'll circle back to it. I'll have Grant just go ahead and move forward since we can't hear you at this time.
All right. I'll wait till later. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Kim. Thanks, Neil. Right, next up on our agenda, arts programs update.
Yes, and Maggie is going to present some slides to you. Those were the ones that were next in my slide deck. So I'll put those back up and she can share with you a little bit about what you're going to see. Maggie, I think you're muted.
I was just chatting, Justin. I'm like, I need sharing rights, but you're going to do it for me. So thank you. So this was a request from the board. I believe if it wasn't last month, it was the month before, to talk about participation in our arts program and what the breakdown of students was, how many students at our middle schools and high schools were participating in our different art programs, and then, kind of some of the characteristics of our students. So in the document that you have just the numbers, and then you also have a list of all the different arts programs that this encompasses. These are the classes that they have. If there is, different clubs or after school or before school programs that have to do with arts or, music, visual arts, those types of things, that is included in this data. So we'll start with the middle school. The total student participation in any type of art program, including classes, is 451 students. You can see the breakdown of ethnicity, as far as our statistically significant ethnicity, which is, our students who are white, our Latino population, our two or more races, and other, our populations that have enough students in their group to show accurate data. The participation mirrors pretty close to identical what our whole student population is. It's not super uncommon at the middle school because most of those students have some type of art in their schedule. When we look at the breakdown of different special programs, 504 EL, language learners, special education. Again, these are the participation of students who do participate versus they don't. I went ahead and same with obviously gender, and then high poverty is our free and reduced lunch. I went ahead and I looked at the kind of the breakdown of what the whole school populations were for the middle school and the high school, and it really does mirror what our student body just looks like. So, okay. The next one is the high school. This is a little bit, students are not required to take an art program every single year. And so when we start looking at special programs and the breakdown of that, I think, we will see a little bit more of a variable, which is what I think the request was really about. The total students that are participating in some type of art program at the high school is 376 students. Our breakdown is for ethnicity is 62% white, and I'm not going to read the screen to you, but it is there. The percentage looked similar, very close to what we would say was the racial or ethnicity breakdown of our population. So I didn't feel like that there were any discrepancies there, or that there was a student population that was not accessing the program, the arts programs. The same as you can see with our special populations, 5 students with 504s, language learners, students with IEPs receiving special education, are all kind of mirror what we would say is their percentage of the general population. And then gender, and then poverty, or free and reduced lunch. Pretty close to what we would say is the percentage of our entire student body. So I think when you start looking at a program participation and you start looking at the breakdown based on special programs or certain student groups, what you're really looking for is to say, do the participation in this program percentages mirror the percentages of what the student body is? And so when I did that quick glance when I was putting these graphs together, is it really does. So at least for our arts program, there doesn't seem to be any type of lack of access or a population that is not participating in the program more than another. So with that, I can answer any questions, maybe.
Maggie? Oh, Grant, I got a question.
Can
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Maggie, I might challenge you a little bit on the last conclusion, and this is the risk of bringing something forward, right? We ask for something, we see it, then we have more questions. We look at the data. And I'll go to an area that's obviously dear to me, is a special education, and where 13% of the high school kids may be special ed kids, and so it sort of mirrors that. I guess what I'd be interested in is, of the special ed kids, how many of them are participating in arts programs? I actually would like to see it higher than what the percentage of the student body it is. In part because I'm not sure that they can fully participate in a lot of the extracurricular activities. Hopefully they can, but not all of them are going to be on the football team or the varsity basketball team. But some of these arts programs, I think they can maybe participate a little bit more. So thank you for this. That's, great appreciation. We haven't looked at this for a very long time, or if ever in the 8 years or so I've been on here. We've had arts updates, but I'm not sure we looked at this level of stuff. If we can go back maybe and just follow up with, if you just look at those populations, and maybe 504 and English learner too, just to kind of drill down and say, of the in and of themselves, what percentage of them are participating? Does that make sense?
It does, Michael, and I'm going to speak a little bit to that, and from an English language, because that is definitely a program that I'm very familiar with. Is that percentage is probably higher than what it was. So if I'm hearing you right, the hope is that we see students with an IEPs, even though they may make up around 13 to 17% of a population of a student body, we would hope that we would see them have a larger percentage of participation in a program, because we know that they're going to have really successful access to that program, or success in that program. Is that kind of what I'm hearing from you?
Yeah, I guess I would like to see that. I'd like to see us have a stretch goal that we go for those populations have a goal of going beyond just what their percentage of their overall student population is. I think this might be an area of opportunity that they can take advantage of, maybe more so than some of the others. And if we can kind of strive to encourage that, I think that would be good. It's just one way of sort of bonding, you know, with the school and all those great things. So.
Absolutely. And peers, yeah, peer relationships and those types of things. I think, definitely, I think we'll discuss this about how to move that forward, and obviously with the high school as well as a good stretch type of growth, especially maybe participation in the extracurricular pieces of the arts programs. I mean, I know there's always those crediting issues, as far as that may preclude them from having to be able to take an arts class every semester or every year, but there definitely is like open labs and those types of things that we run in the summertime that our students could participate in.
And I think some of the things you had on here were like art club and, things like that, where I would hope that other kids can participate. So thank you. This piqued my interest. I really appreciate you bringing it forward.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Maggie. Other questions? Thanks again. Next item, old business, is the school board meeting schedule.
Grant, before we do that, I was able to get Neil's question. He texted it to me.
Oh,
So if
yes.
I could read it and then I could respond real quickly.
Please.
So the question was around transportation for sports. So it says, as many of these events take place during the school week, do we have enough bus drivers or parents, or are more parents doing the transportation? So I think we've talked about it before, and you've probably seen many districts have to eliminate athletic transportation because of the bus driver shortage. We have not had to cancel transportation for athletics to this point. Instead, what we've had to do, particularly at the middle school level, is we've had to adjust game times so that we could finish our routes normal after school routes, getting kids home from school, and then taking kids to wherever they're going for competition. So it's changed the time of many of our events. And we have been in situations where we didn't have enough transportation to get our, drivers to get our kids someplace, or the vice versa for whoever we are competing against. But the other district did, and sent transportation to come and pick up our kids. So there've been some really creative things that have happened, thanks to our athletic director and other athletic directors who are all doing what they can along with our bus services personnel to find ways to get around that. So there could be a time when we don't have enough buses, and then we would turn to parents and say, we have a game coming up on Tuesday night and we are going to have to cancel unless we can get families to help transport and go that route. But so far we have not had to do that.
Thanks, Kim. Okay, old business, school board meeting schedule. So we have a update revision. I think the one revision is adding a board training day, Wednesday, January 19th.
Yes,
Correct.
so we have a training Wednesday, January 19th at 6 p.m. It is board member orientation. It's all about being a board member, and this is customary for us to do this type of training anytime we have new members who join our board. So that is added to the board meeting schedule.
Okay, and then we need to formally approve this, right?
Yes, please.
So I would make a motion to approve the updated board meeting schedule. Can I get a second?
Michael.
Thank you, Michael. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
And Kim, that was at 1800, or what time was it? I missed it.
Yes.
Yeah, 6 o'clock.
And the location?
District office.
Okay. I go by military time, so I'd have to
It
verify
just,
what you're talking about.
there has to be, just give me that little short delay so I can do the math. But yep, 1800.
All right, new business, May academic calendar.
So each year in January, the board is asked to approve the calendar for the next school year so that we can provide that to families so they can know when school starts, ends, and count when vacations are scheduled, those types of things, spring break, winter break. So this is the calendar that we're putting forth after a vote of our staff.
Okay, I see the first day of school is August 31st. School concludes on June 12th.
And of course, that last day end date is adjusted if there are makeup days that go beyond snow makeup days that are already built into the calendar.
Okay, spring break stays, their traditional has been the first week of April,
For first full week of April, yeah.
and then 2 weeks of Christmas. Any questions?
Yeah,
Any questions?
real quickly. Sorry, Grant. I think that 2 years ago it was necessitated, and I think we found that teachers liked it, so we did it again this last year. Maybe it's on here, Kim. I'm not looking at it right now, but are we going to do what we did the last couple of years and have the kind of conferences those first few days? And then I think that got us into where the parents enjoyed not having the actual school day start till after Labor Day or something. Is that kind of the same thought for next year?
In order for us to do that, we need to receive a waiver. And so we would need to go through that process first. We have had good response. Our parents have appreciated having the opportunity to have a meet and greet with a teacher, opportunity for a student to get to know the campus, where their locker is or their desk and cubby and all that. So it is something that we will definitely contemplate. But it does require us to reach out to the state board.
Okay, but that still kind of fits within the schedule that you have now. It'd just be what we do on those days.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Michael. Good question. Any other questions? If not, I would move to approve the academic calendar for 22-23. Do I hear a second?
This is Neil, so moved,
Thanks, Neil.
if you can hear me.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
My
Neil, second?
internet's horrible tonight. I apologize.
It's okay. It's the world we live in. No other questions? All in favor of approving the academic calendar 22-23, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? All right, calendar is approved. Our next item, we have 2 out-of-state travel requests.
We do. We have 2 out-of-state travel requests. It's to the same conference. It does not require our teachers to be out on miss a day of school. It occurs over a weekend, a long weekend. It's this coming weekend. But because they are using mini grant funds, there are some district funds that are set aside through our collective bargaining agreement with our teachers. But because some of the funds are coming from the district, it requires approval.
Okay. Board members, any questions about the out-of-state travel?
What are they going for? What?
It is it's a conference specifically designed for 4th grade teachers. So there's not very many of those. And the sessions are aligned to Common Core standards. And what else does it say? A variety of presentations and breakout sessions. It's a national conference, widespread issues concerning education and how various states handle them. That's the highlights of the little synopsis they provided. It says one of the presenters is expert for using Google Classroom. And so they're hoping to get some tips for that in the event that they have to continue to use Google Classroom moving forward.
And they're doing this on their own time over the weekend.
Right.
Mhm.
And because they needed to book travel, they knew that if the board chose not to approve the agreement, that they would have to just use those tickets at a later time.
Sorry, can you explain I think part of the note here is it's paid for with grant funding, grant or private funds. Is that's a set aside?
Yes, so there's a certain amount of money that's set aside each year for our teachers to apply to use, and it is a provision of their collective bargaining agreement that they can each have up to $850 a year for continuing education.
Gotcha.
And so they applied for those funds, but because they initiated as district funds, that's why this is here for your approval, even though it's on their own time.
Thank you. Okay, so can we approve these together, or do we need to do them one
You
at a
may.
time? Okay.
You may.
So if there aren't any other questions, do I have a motion to approve the out-of-state travel for both teachers?
I'll approve it. Sure.
Thanks, Thomas. I will second. Any other discussion? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, out-of-state travel is approved. Okay, next item is contracts. We have 2 contracts.
So the first contract is with the Washington Center for Deaf and Hard of Hearing, and it is a language change to the contract, and it is involving safety net language needing to be included on invoices. And so that is a technicality necessary for us to be able to apply for safety net funding to cover the costs. And so we've asked them to change that agreement.
Okay, so no change in costs or
Correct.
just making sure dotting the i's, crossing the t's.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions on that, board members? So I would move to approve the Washington Center for Deaf and Hard of Hearing contract. Do I hear a second?
It's Michael, I'll second.
Thanks, Michael. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
I,
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, contract's approved. Next contract is the Olympic Academy.
This is a modification or a revised contract to include the addition of another student that they will be serving from our district. So again, the Olympic Academy is a specialized program for students who have unique behavior challenges and need a specified program to assist them.
Any questions on that?
And Kim, remind me, where was this at again?
Yes, it is in Chehalis.
Chehalis.
It's located in Chehalis. So we provide busing transportation to and from.
Okay.
Thanks, Thomas. All right, can I get a motion to approve the Olympic Academy contract update?
this is Neil, so moved.
Thanks, Neil. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thanks, Thomas. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Contract's approved. All right, thank you. Now we're moving on to surplus. January surplus. I think this is a bunch of IT.
Correct. A lot of technology, a lot of really well used Acers and Dell desktops and towers and laptops and a variety of things. So again, processes approved here. If they're approved, then we make them available to other public entities, particularly school districts. If no one wants, or is interested in them, then they are sold on our publicsurplus.com website.
All right, any questions on that? Okay, I will make a motion to approve the surplus January 2022. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Thomas. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Surplus is approved. All right, our last item in new business is substitute pay rates.
And Jill will be doing the presentation of this.
Great, thanks, Jill.
I don't have screen sharing ability, so if you're muted.
I'd be happy to share.
So in Kim's presentation, she talked about the creativity people were having to have to fill classrooms when staff were out, and that's due to our inability to obtain certificated substitutes. So overall, substitutes are down, but in looking at our neighbors and seeing what they're doing, we're trying to be creative to see if we can kind of do some of the things they do. So we are part of the Lewis County Substitute Cooperative. And so those districts listed there on the screen all share a pool of certificated substitutes. Of course, there are some that say they only want to come to Rochester, they only want to go to Mossy Rock, but there are a pool of them that get dispersed out amongst those districts listed. We could go to the next page, yep. So each district can pay a different rate to their certificated subs. So these are all the member districts. You'll see that a full day rate is $145 for every district except PL. And they're unique because they only have school 4 days a week and the days are longer. So that's why at the beginning, they pay a higher rate for the full day and half day. And where people start differentiating is after a sub has been in your district for 30 days, it does not have to be consecutive days, just any 30 days, they can start changing the rate of pay. So you can see if a substitute works in Centralia for 30 days, the rate of pay bumps up to $252 or $138. Same with Chehalis. If you have a bachelor's degree, it bumps up to $289. And if you have a master's degree, it bumps up to $346. And what Rochester currently does is after the 30 days, we bump to $155 to $85. So it's a $10 and $5 increase. But you can see that's nowhere near what our South I-5 neighbors are paying. And so a lot of subs want to be in Centralia and Chehalis because they have an opportunity to earn more money. So these are the examples of fill rates. So if however many subs they needed and then how many went unfilled. And so I looked at all the high schools in the districts that have high schools, and you could see, for example, it says Adna Elementary, but it's Adna High School. Adna had 4 unfilled sub jobs in the month of November, and Rochester had 22. So that was 22 instances in which kids had to be dispersed, administrators had to be in the classroom, specialists in the classroom, trying to piecemeal filling those kids' days. So we have a 56% fill rate. So at the high school level, we have the lowest rates. And then these were elementaries. And so I picked that if a district had multiple elementaries, I picked the one with the worst fill rate. So ours in the month of November was Grand Mound, and we had a 54.29% fill rate, which meant 16 were unfilled. But then if you go up to like Oakview Elementary, their fill rate was 69.12. So they had 21 unfilled. So they had more unfilled than us, but they had more absences to begin with. So we were still essentially the lowest percentage wise, right in there with Winlock Elementary. So in looking at that, yeah, we can. So our proposal, our goal would be to increase the certificated substitute pay in order to become more competitive with other member districts in an effort to improve fill rates. So this is, the Centralia, Chehalis, Napa Vine, those were the ones that had the greatest increase in longitudinal pay. And so what we would what I'm proposing is after 30 random days in our district, pay would increase to $245 or $130, which is $100 increase per day, or a $50 if it's half a day. And we don't know, we've talked about this for many years, if this is going to help solve the situation, but we've never quite been this desperate. And looking at the fill rates of Centralia and Chehalis that have the highest rates, they're pretty good. So it would maybe lend one to believe that that does play a factor in determining where a sub wants to come. And I'll also add that we currently have employed 4 certificated full-time subs, 2 K-5 and 2 612 that are filling jobs every day as well. So we're still going with those unfilled, even when you count them in. So any questions?
Thank you. Maybe it's more of a comment. ADNA, one of the examples, they don't have an increase at all, but they're doing pretty well. But
And
also a small, very small district.
Yes, and those in ADNA stay in ADNA. That's a very tight-knit community. They probably have a plethora of subs that only choose to go to ADNA. They're a unique one. Mossy Rock tends to have ones that only go to Mossy Rock as well.
Yeah, and certainly the comparison to Trinity Chehalis makes a bit more sense. And you definitely see the impact it appears to be having for them. They're much more successful.
And
Although
not a lot, but we've had in passing, like we have a sub that's scheduled to come, and then the day before they get offered a job in Chehalis, and they'll cancel our job to pick up Chehalis's because they know it's going to be more money. So then we're left with that last minute unfilled job that maybe we thought for this past week was going to be filled, but then they drop us to go to Chehalis.
you're scrambling.
Jill, can you educate me real quick here? Couple questions.
Mhm.
Is there a difference between a certificated and an uncertificated substitute?
So a certificated substitute would be a classroom teacher, somebody who holds a teaching certificate.
Okay,
So we'll
And-
reference certificated subs and classified subs. So classified subs would be our paraeducators, our office staff, those types of work groups.
okay. Would it be unprofessional to maybe reach out to the people just in this district if they were teachers and have retired? If we're in that big of a crunch, is that common, or, just trying to make ends meet? Like there's a retired teacher around the corner from me.
I think typically, once they retire, if they want to be a sub, they get on the sub list because they know they want to. So we do have retired teachers that are on our sub lists, and those that don't do it, some of them let their certificate lapse because they know they never want to do that again.
Okay.
Do their time. I will tell you, our greatest recruiters of teachers who are retired are their coworkers who aren't yet retired. So they're like, hey, we are having a hard time. Are you sure you won't come back and help us out? And so we are tapping into that group of individuals. And often, Jill referenced, there are people within the pool that will only go to certain places. Often those are those people. They're willing to substitute for their former coworkers, but they're not going to go off to some other district.
Okay.
But thank you for thinking of that, because we need all of this type of thinking to get us through what we're experiencing right now. So we would be looking for a motion to increase the rates.
So I have one more question. I'm sorry.
Sure.
We need the hand raising thing or something feature on this. I don't know if we might do this at the peril of all the other districts, but why are we trying to compete on the 30-day? what if we just lowered our day to 20 days and said, come to Rochester and we'll get you the higher rate after 20 days instead of 30 days? Would that make any difference at all? Or it's kind of
It's an
negligible and
idea.
it's really about the total amount of money?
I had never thought of that, but it is an option. But then it's that line of how much do we want to undercut our neighbors? They're still our neighbors and we need them for things. So I think there's that balance too.
Yeah, I agree, Jill. I wonder, like, how much of a bidding war do we want to get in here? But if we're, if folks are already doing different amounts after 30 days, then maybe we get ahead of them by 25 days or something. I don't know, but I'm certainly open to trying this and see if it works. And if not, then maybe we have to take a little bit more drastic measures.
It's a starting point, I think. I think we can see if it makes a difference, because we've always thought, is it really make a difference? We've been talking about that for probably 4 years. And I think this could get us some data as we watch our fill rates to see if it moves in the right direction.
Yeah. Grant, I don't know if you called for the motion yet or not, but if you did, I'm happy to offer up the motion to approve this proposal. But if you're not there yet, then I'll shut up.
Well, I'll take your motion, but I have one more question. With this 30, is it the intent here, the 30-day proposal, would that be retroactive? So if we've had substitutes that starting this school year, they have 30 days in already, they'd be eligible?
So we would make it, yes, and we would make it effective January though, because we already have some teachers that have been here 30 days and are getting their longitudinal, and we wouldn't back pay them.
Not back pay, but they may qualify.
Yeah, starting in January, their whole 30 days get to start in September.
Okay, yeah. If they had 36 days already, they don't get back pay for those 6 days. But
Right.
starting now, they forward.
Yep.
Okay. Other questions, comments?
This is Neil, if my internet holds up. So is there a shortage of substitute teachers across the board in this co-op to fill positions in all
Across
these
the
districts?
state. The shortage is probably across the nation.
Yeah, but this co-op that we're involved with these other local schools, there's a shortage already in place. So it's
Yes.
a competitive shortage. So we might as well climb on that Ferris wheel. Should we do this for like a 2-year term to see if this makes a difference? Or is this going to be a permanent position we're going to be taking? Thank you.
I think once we approve the rates, we do not have to approve them annually, but we will definitely be watching the data to see if it's making any difference or doing any good. But I think it'll be hard to roll back once we start it. We can maybe see if we need to roll forward, but I think these would be our new rates moving forward.
Actually, one more question, Jill. So I'm sure you've done projections on what this might look like through the end of the school year, budget-wise. We're in good position there.
Yes, and I would actually, the increase, I would charge to our ESSER funds. We would start split coding our subs, which we have plenty to do.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right, Michael, is your motion still good?
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. Do I hear a second?
This is Neil. I will second that.
Thank you, Neil. All in favor for the updated certificated substitutes pay rate adjustment? Say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes. Thank you. All right, so now we are moving into our second opportunity for public input. If you like to share something with the board, please enter your name and email address in the chat, and we'll call you in that order. Give it about a minute. Also, while we're waiting here, I wanted to share from our last board meeting. We had some public comment and wanted everybody to know that we followed up with the district's legal counsel regarding the COVID request we received through the community comment and the petition. And our attorney, confirmed the board's vote to reject that, aligned with his recommendations. He also agreed with there was things within that petition that we have implemented around testing requirements and those types of things. So felt good about that. He also, some of the comments around that opinion were, the school board members are not elected to make policy regarding overall issues, public health, elected to make educational policy. And when doing so, we're required to incorporate mandates and recommendations of those public agencies that make those mandates. And obviously, there's a lot of debate and challenges around what's been implemented with the pandemic-related projections or protections, and some, whether that's contrary to law, equity issues. That the forum for that is obviously a court, and as of yet, those haven't been overturned, and the school board doesn't have the authority, as a court of law to make those determinations. And also, as Kim shared earlier in her presentation, that the challenges with some of the mandates or recommendations from the CDC, our Department of Health, OSPI, LNI, our county health department, or the governor, that advocacy really needs to go to those public institutions to change those rules or mandates. We don't have the authority to oppose them or to ignore them. But I think we're making progress. Okay.
Grant, I sent you, there's a list of people that I've sent you. So.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Okay. First speaker, Karina Watt, then Heather Mitchell. Welcome.
Directors of the board and administration, I wanted to take a minute to thank you for affirming your intention and desire to partner with parents and community members. And I want to thank you for demonstrating this by eliminating the weekly testing of unvaccinated employees, by bringing the employee back that you had placed on unpaid leave. And as of this week, in light of Omicron, see the benefit and need of implementing health policies within our district indistinguishably by requiring all employees to wear a surgical and KN95 mask. And I respectfully ask that you continue to demonstrate consistent implementation of actions that reflect your acknowledgement of parents and community members as stakeholders in our children's education. And Grant, you just spoke to some of this, but I'm going to ask for more in terms of revisiting the criteria that 415 members of this community put before you at the December 8th board meeting. That more explanation than was given tonight in terms of why you don't think you have the authority to follow Washington state, federal constitution and laws, why you don't have the authority to treat people indistinguishably, why you might not have the authority to follow what is minimally required versus what is recommended. And in light of, and good to hear that you will be surveying the community along these lines, and I would hope that we see some of that language, that criteria that the community brought to you, incorporated into that survey as you take a closer look at that. And in doing so, you reestablish through action that you, the board of directors, are responsible for school policy, while administration is responsible for education. Two, I open the school board meetings. Continue, of course, with Zoom recording and posting those meetings. But if we can gather safely for athletic events, then you have demonstrated you have the ways and the means to gather and dialogue in person with your community. And three, I ask that you stand with your community by publicly rejecting Senate Bill 5820, which would effectively make the superintendent of public instruction an appointed versus elected position. This bill, should it pass, eliminates parents and taxpayers and community members as equal stakeholders in their children's education. For failure to do so means that you reject parents and taxpayers and community members as partners in educating their greatest and most precious resource, our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Karina. Next is Heather Mitchell, then Jason Watt.
Thanks, you guys. So just a couple things. I too want to reiterate that I really appreciate that we are now requiring that all employees wear surgical or KN95 masks. I appreciate that change has occurred within our schools. But more importantly for me today, I'm going to second what Karina said related to opening the school board meetings to the public. We are now gathering together as a community in all sorts of environments, whether it be indoors or outdoors. And at this point, there's really no reason to not have some face-to-face board meetings. And so I'm pleading with you guys to please consider that we can start having an open dialogue face-to-face, continue to offer Zoom meetings for those that feel more comfortable with attending electronically. And ask that happen for the next board meeting. You have the ways, you do have the means. Please allow us to have a little bit of sense of normalcy when it comes to these board meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Jason Watt, then John Mortensen.
Yeah, just real short, just want to really reiterate some of the same things they just said, and mainly the board meetings. I really think we need to move ahead, and everyone, I know other districts in the state are doing it, and I think we really need to start doing that. Hopefully that happens in the next meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Jason. John Mortensen, then Ed Singleton.
Hi, team. Basically the same things, but when I saw that the governor wanted to appoint superintendents, that really gave me alarm, because you guys know that one of the most, or the most important thing of board is to hire a superintendent. And if that's taken away from us, well, if that's taken away from you guys, I think that's really a bad thing. And we, as board members and superintendents, we should really fight that to where the governor would appoint superintendents. So hopefully we can all team up together to defeat that. And there again, I think it's a good idea. Open up a place for us to community to meet and still keep Zooming and recording would be great. So that's it.
Thank you, John. Ed Singleton, then Carrie Wallace.
Oh, sorry, this is Amanda. I guess that's what it says when I'm at home.
Sorry, Amanda, go ahead.
Hey, Grant, I appreciate the feedback tonight. I think if I have asked for anything, meeting after meeting, it's to have real collaboration, real conversation, to be considered as a valuable opinion, a valuable stakeholder in our kids and the decisions that are being made. I'm glad to see there's a survey coming out. I saw in the bulletin there's a wellness committee. If I had the time in the world, I would jump right on that. But I don't know how it can be done. I get there have to be formalities. I get that there's a hierarchy and that, you know, we have to follow the rules and do the things. There are tough things happening in our world, really, really tough things. And to be a parent and have an opinion and feel like you're hearing it as a board and that we know what you're doing after you hear us speak. You know, this is the first real feedback I've heard from you tonight, that you actually checked in to some of the things that we've asked for. And it took hundreds of signatures to feel like we were heard. I don't know what the solution is. I don't know how we can go about it. I know everybody's time is limited, but you know, so just something to consider. We really want to be part of what's happening in our community and the schools that our kids are attending, or that we want our kids to be attending. So it's not a specific ask. I don't even know what to ask, but I care a great deal about what's happening, and I care a great deal about being considered a valuable opinion in what's happening with our kids. So I appreciate everybody's time. I know it's a heavy lift for each and every one of you.
Thank you, Amanda. Carrie Wallace?
Thank you. I'm just joining in and sharing that I really think that there needs to be an opportunity for these board meetings to be in person. As it's been said, we're meeting for sports, community gatherings, all sorts of ways. Why can't we do that for a school board meeting? I think that offering it via Zoom and still having the recordings is great, but it really is time for us to have in-person meetings so that we can be there and maybe have that face-to-face interaction that comes. And I think it also adds more of a personal touch to it where we may feel more connected to the board instead of just seeing them on a video or seeing you on a video, sorry. And then also just looking for support as well for the Senate bill. I think we as parents need to have a voice in who's making the decisions for the schools in Washington state. And if that's taken away and given to the governor, I think that that's just a huge mistake. And I hope that the board joins us in supporting or in not supporting that bill. So thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. I'll go back and look at that bill again, but I was looking at that earlier. I believe that bill is about the appointment of the state superintendent of OSPI, Chris Reichdahl, which similar concerns, agree with some of those same concerns, but not district superintendents. School boards still have that authority. So I think this is just about the OSPI director or state superintendent appointment versus elected. Still an important issue.
Hey, Grant.
Yes.
One quick comment on what you were talking about there. What's the so if it's just at the state level, like you believe it is, not our level, which I agree with you, he should not be dictating who we want to be the superintendent down here. But what's the lesser of two evils? The governor, whether you like him or not, appointing somebody he likes, or the people in Seattle electing somebody that fits their mold. Just at the state level, I'm just basically just making a comment about that.
Yeah, I believe the bill is about that specifically, that the governor, it would become a cabinet level position that the governor appointed versus a statewide elected position, just at OSPI. School districts still have full control. That's what boards are for.
Yeah,
a portion of what we're for. Yeah. All right. We have, I think that's the end of public comment. I don't see any more names in chat. We are going to go into executive session for about 10 minutes. No decisions will be made. No outcomes, but so we will move to executive session and be back in about 10 minutes. So Justin, if you could work your magic.
Need to push people out to the waiting room and then we'll take care of that. So.
Okay.
So Grant, we got 10 minutes.
Yes. Yeah, at 10 minutes it's on. Let's see, wait till let's get to the waiting room and then stop the recording.
Make sure I don't kick anybody out. Thomas, Neil, Michael, Grant. I believe that's everything. 1 second. Hold on.
Shauna, you're staying with us, right? Okay, thank you. We're back from session. We will officially adjourn the meeting.